Super John McGinn, I don't think you understand. He's Unai Emery's man. He's better than Zidane. We've got Super John McGinn. Welcome to a very happy Friday morning, latest episode of First Word in Sport. How are you, James? I hope you enjoyed that.
I enjoyed the game last night and didn't enjoy your singing there. We'll have less singing on this podcast. Thank you very much, Luke. Yeah, what a performance by Villa last night. And as we now know, footballers can turn it on and off when they want to. Chalk and cheese to the Sunday night performance against Tottenham, to the game last night against Forest in Europa League. We now know that when they want to play, they can play. When they don't want to play, they don't have to play, as shown by you boys and to a certain extent the Chelsea lot as well. But yeah, congratulations through to the final.
It was a crazy evening. It's the best atmosphere I've ever seen at a game, and I think I would say it's probably my favorite ever game I've been to. I think, eclipsing even things like Inter Milan and games like that. Mainly because I was there with my eldest daughter, who's 10, and she was obviously very apprehensive before it. I didn't want tears. We've seen tears at Villa Park before, so there was a level of nervousness around it, and yeah, it's just amazing. So to get to experience that with her was incredible, and she's loving her football, and she absolutely loved it. So amazing night, and I can't. As you touched on, attitude and effort was unbelievable. What I would say is there's a couple of things that really stood out when you're watching it. One was Ollie Watkins was unbelievable, and his play off the ball in the last 3 or 4 weeks, even though Villa haven't been getting great results, his work rate, unless you're able to see it sort of in person and actually appreciate just how much energy he expends chasing down hopeless causes, how strong he was, just unbelievable. And then obviously, the likes of Super John McGinn, I think few players sum up, what it really means at this level than he does. Unbelievable. £2.5 million from Hibs. Wow.
Yeah, it's he did a fantastic interview actually on TNT. I watched it last night, where he went through all his previous managers, mentioned Dean Smith, Gerrard, and I can't remember the other one who you mentioned before.
He mentioned Steve Bruce.
Steve Bruce, that was it.
Throw a cabbage at him.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, talisman of the club, isn't he? Complete talisman of the club. And yeah, 2 brilliant finishes as well. Took them really nicely. But yeah, I mean, a couple of things was obviously when we saw that team use, we were texting offline, kind of what's happening offline. Lindelof, where was he going to play? There's 3, or was he playing the defensive midfield? And he played defensive midfield. We talked about it, didn't we? That Bogard just looked fish out of water in the game last week. It might be very good, might be good, don't know. But the game was too big for him last Thursday night. And Lindelof played, and Lindelof just sat in front of the back two, with 2 centre-backs, and allowed Matty Cash and he allowed Digne on the other side to go forward, and he would just sweep everything up. It was very clever from Emery. And Buendia had a game of his life, and it was just ridiculous how good they were, the atmosphere of these things. And Forest, they had a few injuries, and obviously their right back, Aina, was injured, Abbott was concussed. They had the young Brazilian lad at right back, fish out of water, playing right back. And Gibbs White, you mentioned on Monday, he just was never going to play, was he? That was head injury, looked horrendous. And yeah, I don't think even if they had all their best players playing, I know they didn't have, who else didn't they have playing?
Sangaré
didn't play with Anderson. They still wouldn't have won last night. Villa are miles better. I was impressed by Anderson. I don't think he's a £100 million player, but he has grown in me in the last month or so. He is a very good player. Don't get me wrong, but he's not a £100 million player. He's obviously, I think he's off to City anyway, but that's probably his last game for one of his last games for Forest.
He had an impossible task last night, to be honest. Just going back to Lindelof quickly, I think what was really interesting with it, and you saw it within the first couple of minutes, was how deep Lindelof would drop from goal kicks. And then you'd find he would be sat in front of Wood, and then one of the normally Konza would be sat behind. And what it meant was that unless the goal kick was absolutely perfect, Wood just wasn't getting that ball, and it basically nullified him out the game a little bit. And given he hasn't got pace or anything like that to hurt you, you know, you just took a lot of his game away. It was just really quite clever game planning, and it was impressive to see.
Yeah, and what it allowed is then it allowed McGinn to come inside, Brendier to come inside. You had Rodgers and you had Tielemans, and you overloaded Domingos and Anderson and took control of that space in the middle of the park, and they just couldn't cope with you. And then obviously get the goal, great piece of skill by Brendier. The delay for the pass, just that half a split second just to get his head up again, just allowed Watkins to stick it in the back of the net, and it was almost game over then. It was
Well, it,
impressive.
it was
I mean, you needed a
interesting.
second goal, obviously, but as soon as the second goal went in, it was all roads lead to Istanbul.
It was interesting because obviously Villa dominated that first half an hour or so before the goal, and you were just thinking, oh, it was like miss hit shot, and you're there going, come on, please, someone sort of stand up and be counted. And it was unbelievable from Wendy. And when Villa equalised, so it went 1-0 up, it honestly, it didn't look like there'd be any other outcome. It just felt like there was no chance for Forest at that point. One thing I would say, and you won't really have seen it quite so badly on TV, but I think Forest killed themselves a little bit last night. As good as Villa were, Forest came out so negatively, and what you saw was Ortega literally from the first minute wasting time, like really wasting time. And I think I've seen something since where I think the ball was in play for 24 minutes in that first half, and so what you saw in that first 10, 15 minutes was Ortega time wasting, time wasting, time wasting. And then every time Forest got the ball, they were so negative with it. It was always like pass back, trying to keep the ball, pass back, and then it often get turned over. And I just think, from a mindset point of view, if Forest had gone out there and got that first goal, Villa would have really struggled to get back into that game. And once Villa were able to get that first goal, as I say before, it was all over. But I just don't think Forest helped themselves with sort of mindset as to how they went into that game. It is tough to go in there and say, "Oh, we're going to be attacking," but they showed nothing.
Yeah, considering how they played at Chelsea on Monday afternoon as well.
But what I would say about that, so I mean, we touched offline about this, is they had a ludicrous run in, say, I think his last 5 Premier League games. They have basically taken almost every chance they've had. And you saw that even in that Chelsea game where they scored after 2 minutes, Awoni, and then they obviously got the penalty after 15 minutes. They're 2-0 up. Goals change games. I always say it. And they had something to sort of play for. Obviously, they've had a lot of good fortune after that. Chelsea hit the post. They had the goal disallowed for offside. They missed the penalty. Forest got a very narrow one, which they scored onside. It was a lot of things went Forest's way that day. But one thing they've done in recent weeks is they've just taken their chances. Even in the first leg, obviously there's the Martinez save, but they got a penalty literally out of nothing. But they didn't create much. And when you have a situation where you're just taking every chance, when you don't suddenly take every chance, life becomes a bit trickier, and you get a better
Absolutely.
idea as to where the team is at.
And hey, look, VAR works, doesn't it? When it's done refereed correctly by VAR. Yeah,
I mean,
but then again,
I haven't seen a
go on.
replay, by the way, of the penalty in terms of the decision, but I can't believe it wasn't given real time. It was the most obvious pull you've ever seen.
Yeah, the referee just bottled it and then relied on VAR to get it right. They just, I mean, it's clear as day and didn't even have to have one replay kind of thing. But yeah, just mindless defending from the Forest had. But yeah, I mean, brilliant from Villa kind of thing. And then now you probably just need one more victory, don't you? Go Burnley on Sunday and you're almost top 4, 5 guaranteed and
Yeah,
all road
important.
leads to Istanbul.
I think it's important to beat Burnley at the weekend, just because what you don't want is your Champions League hopes hanging on beating Freiburg. Should beat Freiburg, but you never know. I mean, honestly, football's a strange beast, and would want to seal top 5 in the Premier League, through merit. And come back to it. I've said it a few times on this pod before. Is Unai Emery? Went into the season, expectations were low, despite obviously recent successes. Spent less money than anyone in the whole league this summer, and the chaos before the start of the season. If Villa had finished top 10, it was almost like would have been an okay result. And to get them into position where they are, obviously final Europa League, top 5 in the league. Honestly, I keep saying the guy's an absolute genius in terms of what he can get out of a group of players.
Oh, I think that's his 6th Europa League final or UEFA Cup final, isn't it?
So he's done it with three other teams. Obviously, I think he's won 4 out of 5 so far.
Yeah, I think he's in his 6th final kind of thing. But let's be honest, Europa League in the last couple of years has diminished a lot
It
since he
has,
got.
but you got to remember a lot of his success was when it wasn't diminished.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
with relatively small clubs, which is extraordinary, really.
Yeah, I remember when Liverpool went to Basel against Seville, went 1-0 up with Daniel Sturridge scored an amazing goal outside of left foot from 20 odd yards, 25 yards. And then Dejan Lovren did Dejan Lovren things in the second half and lost 3-1 and got absolutely battered, Liverpool. But yeah, quickly, just a gripe on the Europa League and the Conference League. Obviously, now with the Champions League having so many teams in it, was it 32 teams in Champions League or something ridiculous these days? And none of them come down? Because back in the day, obviously, you had 8 groups of 4, and then the third place team of that came down into Europa League or UEFA Cup kind of thing. So it's slightly diminished. And you're playing Freiburg in the European Cup final, who are 7th in the Bundesliga. I mean, go and buy some lottery tickets kind of thing, considering what the. I mean, I remember one of the best UEFA Cup finals was actually at Villa Park. I think it was 1997. I think it was Lazio versus Inter Milan with Vieira and all that lot kind of playing. I remember that because obviously Italian football was on Channel 4, started 2 or 3 years previously, kind of here in the UK. But yeah, happy days of playing Freiburg, who beat Braga last night kind of thing. I mean,
But the only thing I would say to that is that Tottenham and United didn't beat much last year.
absolutely.
What you found this year was that a bit like the Champions League is all the best teams are in one side of the draw.
Yeah.
So your likes of your Lille's of the world, they're pretty reasonable team. Villa have certainly played multiple teams before played better teams in multiple times before the final. Let's put it that way. It's just luck. It is luck of the draw at times in terms of how it pans out. I mean, I talked about it with John on podcast. Was it last week? I can't remember now, but where we talked about teams dropping down and not, and what you can do to help solve the situation. I don't know. I mean, one of the problems you have a little bit is the integrity of the league is under threat a little bit with. If you think that the Premier League teams are going to consistently make the latter stages of the Conference League, Europa League, Champions League, we're going to increasingly find this situation where teams are putting out weakened teams and later on in the season. So one thing I've always said is that when you look through a team's fixtures at the end of the season, you can almost throw them in the bin a little bit because they often bear no resemblance to what actually happens. So those games where you think, oh, that looks a tricky game. In reality, it doesn't always pan out that way. Sometimes you have teams fighting for their lives. Sometimes they're on the beach. Sometimes they've got cup finals coming up. I think it's where Tottenham got incredibly lucky. If they'd got Villa earlier on in the season when things mattered and not in a European week, it would have been a completely different game. But the reality is there's a bit of luck involved with that. And it's where Arsenal have actually had a bit of luck in that final game against Palace. Palace aren't going to care.
Yeah, so Palace play Everton this weekend at home. They don't care. Then they play Man City away. At some point, they didn't care. So yeah, it is a lot like that. How at the end of the season, there's 3 or 4. It could be 3 or 4. Just because of the strengths of the Premier League in terms of budget and wages, you do have a lot more Premier League teams who've got are stronger than other teams across Europe. It's just a cycle, isn't it? It happened in the 90s with Italy in early 2000s, and then Spain took over, and now the Premier League has taken over. Although they've not got the best teams, I'd say the pool of players is probably stronger in the Premier League kind of thing. than it ever has been. But they don't get the superstars of Premier League. The superstars are still playing abroad. They're the forward superstars kind of
Well,
thing.
but we say this, we talked about with John, and that was that. Is it because the rest of their league is so poor, and these guys put up such unbelievable numbers, and also come into these games fresher, that they look so good when they actually, play at these stages of the competition? Let's see how good, Mbappe is in the Premier League. I'm sure he would be good, right? We've seen Harry Kane in the Premier League. He's good. He isn't a 50 goal a season striker. Diaz last year was bang average at times. Obviously, he was really good at times. He looks like, same with Elise. These guys are looking unbelievable away from the Premier League. But we've seen them in the Premier League. Whilst they're very good, they're not, superstars in quite the same way.
I think you made a great point there in terms of physicality, one, and two, rest. I mean, Bundesliga only got 18 teams, only play one cup. So that takes out a lot of things like that. And you have easier games. You're playing for Bayern Munich. You're playing easier games, let's be honest. You can just turn up most of the week and just play at 70% and you'll win the game. You turn up 70% in the Premier League and you'll lose. It's as simple as that. Don't care who you're playing. You have a hard game. So,
But
yeah, it is a point, definitely.
and I think we've seen that. We've literally seen that this week. You will not find two more contrasting performances than the Villa ones, and it just makes you realise that, as you say, if these guys aren't on it, or even if they're 3, 4, 5% off, it makes a world of difference. Enough talking about Villa and Europa League. Just quickly on it, what I would say is, so last night's result and what's happened this week makes sixth place getting a Champions League spot look way more likely now. So with Villa potentially getting a Champions League spot if they were to beat Freiburg, still a long way to go on that. But if Villa finish fifth and win the Europa League, sixth place in the Premier League gets Champions League. The irony being is a good chance it's not going to be Chelsea now. So, Brighton, Bournemouth, who knows? It's there for someone to, it'd be incredible. Imagine, you get a Brighton or Bournemouth in Europe.
Yeah,
Not Europe, Champions League.
Champions League. That's the thing, Champions League, yeah.
Uh,
Just quickly on Palace went through last night. They went through. They beat Shakhtar Donetsk 2-1 at home. So they will play Rayo Vallecano, who beat Gary O'Neill's Strasbourg yesterday, 1-0. So that final is in Leipzig in a couple of weeks, isn't it? Or is it the 20th? I think it's the 24th. It's already 27th, I think it is. It's a week after the Europa League final. So the Europa League final is the 20th of May, obviously. And then the 27th is the conference final in Leipzig. So, yeah.
so, I mean, a bad day for the Chelsea ownership group. Strasbourg laid a complete egg.
Gary O'Neill probably thinks going there to go and get a Chelsea job in a couple of months' time.
I mean, that Chelsea group, they've got their work cut out. I mean, and the best part is no one's going to feel sad for them. If you break the rules in the way that they do, and manipulate the rules and push boundaries and everything else, you're going to find absolutely no one feels sorry for you. And
Did
actually,
you?
gone.
They're protesting this week, aren't they? Or next week against Tottenham about the
I thought they were protesting.
financial mismanagement of. We want our Chelsea back. I mean, we go about this on this pod quite regularly, but yeah, it's entertaining to say the least. Yeah.
I thought they were protesting at the cup final or something, weren't they? I mean, honestly, it was just protesting. You've just spent £1 billion or whatever it is in recent
And the rest.
seasons and the rest, and you're complaining about financial mismanagement. These fans don't know they're born, honestly. And I think that's the thing about the Villa thing last night, is when you haven't had any real success for a long time, is it makes it all the more sweeter. I jokingly say to you about Liverpool fans being very entitled and, you take for granted success. And, I feel like Chelsea fans are very much taking success for granted. When I was growing up watching early days of watching football, Chelsea were garbage all the way through. I remember seeing, we used to see the Shed End, and Stamford Bridge was an absolute dump. Mainly before Harding came in. They don't know they're born. So great. Crystal Palace is interesting, obviously, with Glasner off as well. I mean, it is a week. That is a, you might say the Europa League's a weak competition. That is a really weak competition, that Conference League. Um, but it is interesting for Palace. Obviously, if they do get Europa League next year, Glasner looks like he's off. Mateta could go, Wharton. There'll be a few changes there again. So I guess the only thing with Glasner saying he's leaving so early is that you have to think they've got someone lined up to replace him.
You'd hope they have, but there hasn't been any rumours, has there, at all about who's going to be taking him?
Do you know who I think sneaky feeling for? Silva. I
Fulham.
yeah, I think he's off from. I think he's leaving. I'm pretty sure he's leaving Fulham. I could see someone like him go to Palace in Europe. Bit of a sideways move, but
It's a sideways move, but they are in Europa League next year, and you're probably looking at the squad and go, if I sell a couple of players, sell Wharton for 70, 80 million quid, Mateta for 30, 40 million quid, I go and buy 3 or 4 players for 100, 150 million quid, buy a couple of centre-backs. You've already got a striker there in Strand Larson, I suppose. You've got some wingers and Johnson and Ismail Sarr. I know he's Johnson, but you know what I mean? You could work with him if you wanted
well,
to.
I
Yeah,
look. One of the
I've
points is
thought about
I
it.
think Silva's leaving Fulham,
Yeah,
and you then go, where's he going to go? And there's just not that many open positions for the higher teams. So let's say if Tottenham hadn't got a manager, you could have said, oh, maybe he would go to someone like Tottenham. But the Zerbi is going to be there for a while. There aren't. Maybe Newcastle becomes available, but they'll want someone better than Silva, right?
they
He's
want a
not.
big name.
He's not going to go to Chelsea. I wouldn't have thought. So you wonder where the opportunities actually lie for some of these managers, and the same applies for Iriola as well.
Yeah, because he's not going back to Bilbao because they appointed a manager in the week, didn't they? So yeah, he's not really thought about, but yeah,
Let's talk Champions League. It was another very interesting week. Obviously, semi-finals Tuesday night. I think I've just about woken up from it. I'm being a bit harsh, obviously, on Arsenal. Arsenal victorious against Atletico Madrid. Wasn't the most amazing game ever, but Arsenal just not comfortable. But I didn't ever think they weren't going to get through that tie when you were watching it.
the unwatchables league.
Say no more, James. By the way, so the first thing I do want to say is we did touch on the pod on Monday about Lewis Skelly and how I said to you before the game how happy I was that Arteta had actually made a difficult decision keeping Lewis Skelly in there. They looked so good against Fulham in that first half in particular. Made a difficult decision with Lewis Skelly, to drop Zubimendi effectively. And I do think Arsenal look better. It's something I think Arsenal might address in the summer. So they've obviously got a few obvious holes, like left wing, maybe a new striker. I think they may look at another central midfielder because I don't necessarily think Zubimendi is the answer to what they're trying to do.
Would you have played that if they played Barcelona, PSG, and Munich in that second leg?
Probably not, because
Oh, look, fair play to Arteta.
he'd have got negative. But
Yeah, look, they went through. It's Atletico Madrid. Everyone's talking about this. Is Atletico Madrid team is so bang average. It's untrue how bang average they are. They've got 2 players in that team you would take. Jan Oblak, who's a top 5 goalkeeper in the world, and obviously Julian Alvarez, who I'd swap any Liverpool player for him every day of the week, twice on Sunday. He's absolutely fantastic. He was half fit on.
Szoboszlai?
Yeah, you name it. Don't care. He's that good. He was half fit. He also got injured in the first leg, didn't play in the league game the weekend, and was half fit. Bar that, where would they finish? The 2 centre-backs made Gyökeres look prime Van Basten, prime Ibrahimovic. Everyone's going, oh, Gyökeres is... He's going to 2 absolutely very... Robin Lamormad is absolutely garbage.
James.
Terrible.
Sometimes you just have... Gyökeres, even though the defenders were poor, he had a very good game.
Yes.
Obviously, expectations are low with him, right? That's the best he's played comfortably, I think, from what I've seen. And I think what we were talking about different leagues earlier. I think what it highlights is just how difficult the Premier League is. That physically he can't do that to Premier League defenders,
Yeah.
and he was able to absolutely pushed them around and made them look, as you say, unbelievably average. And I never quite know whether it's just because he's actually okay or he might be better in other leagues. But he just doesn't play like that in the Premier League. He isn't able to play like that in the Premier League. The central defenders are just too strong.
Yeah, that's why he probably scored all those goals in Portugal, because he could just be a bully essentially up front. And he's got a bit of pace about him as well. Look, he played well. Arsenal went through. They deserved to go through over the two legs. But they've played no one. They've played Leverkusen and Sporting Lisbon and Atletico Madrid to get to European Cup final. But you only have to beat what's in front of you, kind of thing. It's, yeah, and the goal that they scored, I'm trying to think who scored the goal now. Saka, sorry.
Saka.
Yeah, I mean, it's good play from Charles. Great save from Oldback, actually. And Saka's in the right place, right time. There you go again, Saka. Like, he's come back and he's not fit. You can tell he can't last 90 minutes. But he's such a massively important player for Arsenal, just to take the pressure off. As you say, he's genuinely one quality player, top-end quality player they do have up front. But yeah, Simeone had a nightmare, the coach Simeone. I mean, what's he doing? After 55 minutes, 60 minutes, he needed all his 5 subs. Brings Sroloff on up front, who's basically a battering ram, and then you take off your wingers. I don't rate Lookman in any stretch of imagination, but like, you
He's
got a
been
number 9
bang out.
target man.
I mean,
And
given his reputation, he has been so ordinary in these two legs.
yeah, and yeah, £20 million they think they bought him from Atalanta in the summer, kind of thing. But yeah, no, look, Arsenal through to their first Champions League final in 20 years. You
So
know, you only beat what's in front of you, and that's what they've done.
right, so a couple of things from that game, and Gabriel, right?
Oh,
Honestly, until these refs actually grow a backbone and just not fall for all his theatrics, it's ridiculous how he goes down under the slightest contact. And look, I touched on it last week or week before, where about defenders getting these very, very soft fouls, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. Slightest touch, defender falls on the floor. It just it's so annoying, and the referees actually need to be a little bit stronger. And someone like Gabriel, he's as bad as anyone. He's an enormously big, strong central defender. You brush him, and he'll go down like he's been shot. Honestly, it's pathetic. His play acting and cheating. And then the other person, we mentioned this before. We have to mention it again. They have to sort Arteta out in terms of his theatrics on the sideline. He'd already been booked. He's, it's one thing like being passionate and everything else. You cannot be running down the touchline near opposition players. So it almost feels like for an opposition player that you've got someone behind you or marking you, like in terms of in your sort of peripheral vision. And they have to stop it, right? So what you saw at Villa game last night was the referee came over to Emery and to Pereira multiple times and, told them off and gave, members of the bench yellow cards and all that nonsense. But they basically let Simeone and Arteta just literally do whatever they wanted. And it caused some of the chaos. And then you had all the Arsenal substitutes literally, a foot away from the pitch. They shouldn't be there. They were getting in the way. And it just, I don't know, it's not that difficult to sort out for the referee, right? You're in your box, you step out your box, yellow card. You won't step out your box again and do what he was doing. Right, red card, go and watch it from the stands. You're not going to want to miss the Champions League final because you have to sit in the stands and watch it. You can clamp down on this stuff super, super easily.
yeah, I don't actually think it's referee's job. It's a fourth official clearly standing there in the middle and just allows them constantly to go outside the box. Just stand there. Or what they should do is they should just put barriers up. They can't go out. Like, you're not allowed onto pitch for fans when they put that, like, please keep off the grass. Just put rope up so they can't go outside it. It's pretty simple, not hard. Don't care if the players come into it. Just don't. And the substitutions, obviously, the subs are just on the sideline. That was just Arteta. That's just gamesmanship. But UEFA and the authorities just tell them to move away. but they just didn't do it. But yeah, look, he continues to do it and get away with it. You might as well continue doing it. I would do it if I'm getting away with something like that, and I think it's helping my team. I'm going to do it until someone says don't do it. So look, I still don't rate Arteta in any stretch of imagination whatsoever.
I certainly feel like you can't say that they didn't, definitely feel that they've deserved to, they've got through the games, as you say. It's not been pretty. In fact, it's been particularly ugly. And I think one of the things I would say with Arsenal is, I always talk about fine margins, and it was obviously that second half penalty appeal on Griezmann for the foul, where the free kick was given before for the foul on Gabriel, and it wasn't a foul on. He was as guilty as, he didn't get the ball, and he's challenging someone very high, and they're the small things that when they go your way on a different day that could easily have been a penalty, and when things are going your way and you get those decisions, things look easy, and Arsenal aren't giving themselves a huge margin for error. So if Atletico Madrid had got a penalty, say for example, is Arsenal would have been in danger of, going to extra time, penalties. If they'd gone and blown away Atletico Madrid and they were 2 or 3 up, then it wouldn't matter if they conceded the penalty. It's a very dangerous game that you play at times when you do try and sit on the lead in the way that they do.
Yeah, look, my thoughts on Arsenal as a whole, generally, I've just never seen them beat a really top class side. This season, they've played Munich in October. They beat them 3-1. Okay, fair play. Hold your hands up. They played well, but it's October. It has actually not real much dealing with winning anything kind of thing. They won 3-1. They've beaten no one this season. Absolutely no one this season of any note. Atletico Madrid would be what? Mid-table in the Premier League, if you're lucky? Like Inter Milan, I know they're Serie A champions, but again, there would be 7th or 8th. They're just not beating it. That's my point on Arteta and Arsenal. It's not that I don't think they're a good team. I just haven't seen them go, wow, and been really impressed with them and gone, you've beaten a superstar team and gone, wow, you've dominated a game. Now, they might do, but I've not seen any basis at all in the last couple of years. They beat Real Madrid at home, okay? 2 worldies from Declan Rice that he's never done before, never done in his life before. They were 3 up.
Never done since.
No, probably will never do since. We actually had really opportunity to do since. So let's be honest about it. But anyway, they went to Madrid and they were 3-0 up, and Madrid were an absolute car crash under Ancelotti at the time. They still are a car crash. We'll come on to them in a bit. And no, their formation, they had Mbappe, Bellingham, Vinicius Jr., all just trying to go forward. There's no real structure. So, yes, fair play Arsenal, looking like they win a league and they're going to win, goes into the Champions League final. But I'm yet to be convinced how actually good they are. Look, I'm probably pretty jealous as well because they're going to win the league as a Liverpool fan and a Champions League final. That's probably where a few bits coming from. But I'm yet to look at that team and go, wow, I'm super impressed on how much money they've spent and what they're actually doing. Now, they're probably ahead of the curve in terms they realise that the Premier League was going this way, being strong, physical, set-piece dominated, beat the Dross, win the league. And that's what they've done in the last 18 months, 2 years. They have just become a very physical, very set-piece orientated team, and it's proof is in the pudding. They're going to win the Premier League this season by the looks of it. But I have my doubts.
I think what's interesting with Arsenal is, let's say they win the league. It doesn't really matter how many things they win this year, but going forward, they've obviously spent an awful lot of money in recent times. I think there is a limit. You can't just keep going out and spending big money, big money, big money. And we've touched on before, I think they do have a problem in terms of squad, in that there's going to be a few players in that squad, and not least people like Lewis Skelly and your Nwaneris, your Norgards, all these sorts, Martinelli. Eze's obviously started to play a little bit, but even your Havertz of the world, they'll be looking at it going, if I'm not playing, I'm in the sort of prime of my career, then maybe I have to think about moving on. And, even the same with, you've got a situation with, you're not going to be able to keep both Hincapi and Calafiori happy type of thing. There's a limit to your bench being so strong and them not playing. And, I wonder going forward with Arsenal is, in terms of future years, just how easy it will be for them to repeat. I think it might well be tricky. Arteta will certainly have his work cut out, I think.
Yeah, they're going to have to sell in the summer if they want to buy an Anthony Gordon for a left winger spot, kind of, for example.
Well, and I think the other thing is given that the dominance at set pieces has diminished significantly as people have sort of figured them out a little bit, and the referees are clamping down on things a little bit more. And it was always the worry for Arsenal a little bit is that if you weren't getting a goal from a set piece every game like they were almost early on in the season, is where are the other goals coming from? Obviously, you've got Saka back, which helps. Um, but you get found out a little bit. They are limited relatively going forward, I think.
Yeah, agreed with you. Anyway, enough talk about Arsenal, but yeah, fair play. You're in the Champions League final.
Let's talk Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich. I think everyone was expecting another thriller. When Paris Saint-Germain score after 2 minutes, the thought was, wow, here we go again. And it just didn't quite materialize like that. I thought Bayern were poor. Like the number of, sloppy passes, every time they actually had a chance in terms of that make poor, it was almost like they made poor decisions in terms of when to shoot. Quality of the shots was generally pretty poor. I don't know, they just weren't on it really.
When PSG scored that opener of Dembele, they just shut up. They didn't shut up shop. They literally went into defensive mode and went, go on then, break us down. We know we can counter-attack you. The fallout at the back was superb again. Zaire Emery, who's not a right back, they kind of don't really play him as a natural right back kind of thing. They don't really play Hakimi as a. Marquinhos was doing a lot of the work out wide up against Diaz one-on-one at times. But the big player for them, unsung hero, is Fabian Ruiz. He makes an enormous difference to that midfield kind of thing. Just the ability to be there, right place, the pass to Kylian for the opener is just sensational. It really is. First time pass. He also help as well. He's a big, strong lad as well. So he's 6'1", 6'2" kind of thing. He just knits everything together. He reminds me of Gini Wijnaldum at Liverpool. Wouldn't do a thing wrong. Unsung hero. Everyone would say, what's he do on the field? Doesn't score, doesn't assist, doesn't have high XG, whatever it is you want to, stats base you want to look at a player. But he coming back is going to be a big part in the final if he stays fit or if he is fit for the final. The best player in Europe at the moment and in the world is Kylian. He's just absolutely sensational footballer. He can do anything you want. And another thing he's got over a lot of other superstars, his work rate is just unbelievable, second to none. He works with absolute nuts off constantly. He's just a brilliant talent. I've yet to see anyone up against him fullback do go, well, yeah, I'll get the better of you in the game. He's just a ridiculously good footballer.
Well, I think the thing with him I find so interesting is Paris Saint-Germain's form last year took an upturn and a massive upturn when he joined in the January transfer window. And what was interesting at the time was I was almost amazed no one else was interested in him. It was just suddenly, he's signing for Paris Saint-Germain. And what was interesting at the time is you had teams like Man City. They spent similar, not miles away, similar sort of money on Marmoush. And you look at those two, imagine if City had got him instead. I mean, he's amazing. Pep would have probably, taken out that flair out of him. But, incredible player.
Liverpool wanted him because Ornstein put out a tweet, didn't he, in January of that year, of the last year, sorry, and said Liverpool were seriously interested in him. And then 24 hours later, he'd signed a dotted line for PSG. So, yeah, he's just incredible. And the best thing about PSG is they can play in different ways as well. If they want to go at you and attack you like they did in the first leg, they go at you. And they were 5-2 up after 55 minutes in the first leg. Or they want to do what they did on Wednesday night and what they did at Anfield. They sat back in and went, go on then, break us down. And if you can't break us down, we'll counter-attack you. We've got so much pace and ability up front, movement, sensational. Like Desiree Doué, how is he only 20? I mean, it's just unbelievable talent kind of thing. And he's overtaken Barcola on that side. They're a joy to watch, or an absolute joy to watch. They play football the right way kind of thing. Yeah, people say it's a boring game, but they nullified Bayern Munich's threat. They nullified Michael Olise and Luis Diaz to a certain extent. And Pacho, did a job on Harry Kane until like the 94th minute when Kane's goal was just, by the way, it's just another outrageous finish, by the way. Outrageous finish kind of
I
thing.
think the only team who could stop Paris Saint-Germain was, someone like Villa at Villa Park. That was
Or
Fortress Villa
Liverpool
Park.
away in Paris, yeah.
Um, I mean, all jokes aside, they are an incredibly fun team to watch, Paris Saint-Germain, and they have been for a long, quite a while now. And one thing always makes me laugh is when I hear people talk about the Club World Championship in Chelsea and also the Super Cup with Tottenham as well, as if the team that we saw in the Club World Championship last year or the team we saw in the Super Cup last year bears any resemblance to the one which we actually see that's tuned up and firing in the Champions League. They weren't. I remember having conversations with John actually before Tottenham in that Super Cup, and essentially Paris Saint-Germain treated it like a pre-season friendly, literally like the first pre-season friendly, and they were nowhere near where they should have been. And still Tottenham fans think, oh, we were 2-0 up and we were, that's not the real Paris Saint-Germain that you saw that night. And it's the same with the Club World Championship. Chelsea obviously smashed them, and that came at a end of a very, very long season for them. And, we've seen this week, attitude matters. And if you're slightly off, you can get battered.
They remind me, I think I said to you yesterday, of Zidane's Real Madrid when they won back 3 times in a row the Champions League, where for the first 6 months of the season, it was just like getting through in the Champions League. Doesn't matter where you finish in the group, just get through. Doesn't matter who you play in the last 16, last quarterfinals. Quarterfinals, you turn up, then the big boys, they just literally turn it on and off. And they're going that way where they know the French league is very weak. They don't really need to play at full intensity, and they fine tune their players for March, April, May, when actually trophies are handed out, kind of thing. And I just think, looking ahead to the final, I said I fancy them to beat Bayern Munich. I know it's a one-off game, and one-off games, funny things happen in pressure, and one-off games in finals. We've seen it all the time. We'll continue to see it. You look at Liverpool, Istanbul. You even look at Wigan beating Man City in the FA Cup final a few years ago, kind of thing. Things happen, right? But this PSG team, if they have their full strength team, even if and Hakimi's back fit for it, I think they're got too much class for Arsenal. I really do. Arsenal centre backs will have no idea. They had no idea last year in the semi-finals to deal with Dembele playing not as a traditional centre forward, and down the sides. If Ben White plays, he's just going to get absolutely destroyed down that side, kind of thing. I just can't see how. The only way I can see Arsenal winning is by set pieces, and PSG are very good at not giving away set pieces. They just don't give away set pieces because they know that was the strength of Bayern Munich. They saw that in the quarterfinal against Real Madrid. They saw it against Liverpool. They somehow don't give away corners or dangerous free kicks in areas. It's just they're brilliantly coached, and I just can't see anything else buying a PSG win.
I mean, look, anything could happen, but it does feel like we obviously saw with Paris Saint-Germain Inter last year is that Inter could turn up, and Paris Saint-Germain could turn up, and I mean, they could batter Arsenal. I mean, genuinely. If Arsenal were to win it feels like a lot would have to go their way. But sometimes that happens in football,
Yeah.
If you have a 20% chance, and I'm amazed at the prices, I'm not going to lie. I think Paris
So am I.
Saint-Germain are 1.73 to win it. They should be shorter than that. The golfing class between those two teams is bigger than that. Yeah, I think Arsenal need a lot to go their way. And, one of the things you just touched on there is with Arsenal having they effectively play with 4 centre-backs. And the one thing I always say against Arsenal is if you're able to get the ball into the channels. So there's one thing where Watkins has actually had quite a bit of success with Villa against Arsenal, is if you can get the ball into the channels, is because they play 4 centre-backs, it does leave them a little bit exposed. Obviously they try and squeeze up, but there is, if you drag Saliba and Gabriel out wider a little bit, you can have quite a bit of success against them, I think. But we'll talk about that game at a later date. Anyway, good week of Champions League football. Always fun to see. One story that has been making the rounds in the last 24 hours is a pretty interesting one coming out of Real Madrid. Mr. Valverde and Tchouameni. Wow. Um, I don't quite know what's been going on, but it looks like there's been fisticuffs in canteens, and Valverde apparently hit his head on the floor, had to go to hospital. You know, Valverde's put out a statement saying that nothing happened. It's all blown out of proportion. Clearly hasn't been blown out of proportion. There's a lot going on. I don't know if you also saw about Mbappe, and there's pictures of him on holiday, on a yacht or something like that with his girlfriend, wife. And apparently, there's been a petition from Real Madrid fans. It's the largest ever petition for anything ever in history, like online petitions. 30 million people have signed this petition to get Mbappe out of Real Madrid. Wild times at that club.
Complete mess. So he was on holiday with his girlfriend in Italy, I believe, when they were playing Espanyol, and he was putting pictures up on his Instagram or whatever, or social media. I mean, he just generally doesn't care what's going on, does he? But they are a complete mess. And they had to have an emergency meeting last night with Arbeloa, Perez, and Danny Carvalho, the nominated captain, kind of thing. The press conference coming out. So, and the biggest funniest thing about it is they go to Barcelona on Sunday night, 8 o'clock UK time, to play El Clasico, where they need to win. They have to win to stop Barcelona winning the title at the Camp Nou on Sunday night. God knows what team they're going to put out on Sunday night. And a penny for Trent Alexander-Arnold's thoughts this morning, lads, as Liverpool fans.
He should have gone to Villa rather than Real Madrid.
But yeah,
Um,
Mbappe, I wonder if, I always thought Real Madrid, they need some cash, and they probably need, there's big talk, isn't there, has been for the last week, 10 days, about Jose Mourinho going back there. And maybe Perez is just thinking, I just need some disciplinarian there who will just ruffle a few feathers and get them playing for Real Madrid again, kind of thing. But I can't imagine how Mbappe stays at Real Madrid or Vinny Jr. stays. One of them will have to go. And there's no way the likes of, they're going to keep Valverde because he is a brilliant footballer. He's absolutely not going to sell him because he's a future captain. They'll sell Tchouameni to, I don't know who they'll sell him to. I still think he's a very good footballer. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes in the summer, but there are going to be some big changes at Real Madrid.
you,
And
you
it's
could
2
see
years, isn't it, since they've done anything, really. And
you
that's
could
not
see
acceptable at Madrid.
you could see him come to Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's a very good footballer. Him and Camavinga are two lads, if you want holding midfielders or box-to-box midfielders, they're two lads that you could probably get out of Madrid now.
I think the manager situation is interesting because Unai Emery was linked this week quite a lot with that Real Madrid job, and I've said it before on this podcast, but if you read through his book, it's a really interesting book about his time at Paris Saint-Germain. I would be absolutely shocked if he would want to go to Real Madrid and put up with all that nonsense. And it just isn't. Just think he would have zero interest in doing it, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But it is interesting to see, let's talk about someone like Mbappe. Where would he go? Because not many teams can actually afford him. If I was Real Madrid, by the way, I'd keep Mbappe over Vinicius every day of the week. But I don't know quite how that sort of plays out. Let's say Mbappe did, go on the open market. Who could afford him?
There's only one club, isn't there? Man City, really. Or Saudis, but he's not going to Saudi at his age at 28, I think he is now, Mbappe. But there is only one club. Man City could afford him. Well, Chelsea could, but he's not going to Chelsea. Well, he might do if they offer him £1 million a week or something stupid like that.
I could imagine a Vinicius at Chelsea. I feel like they'd be a good fit.
They've got,
Horrible individual, like cheating, diving, like a couple of $100 million into offshore accounts, to make it all work financially.
Haven't they got enough left wingers? Garnacho, Jamie Gittins, Pedro Neto.
Oh, imagine that training session. You got, Chuck Cucurella in there. I mean, honestly. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see how. I think that's where the World Cup's going to be interesting because it's going to affect all this stuff. It's going to be so hard to get deals done before the World Cup, and obviously after the World Cup, that doesn't leave a lot of time. So, I mean, it applies across the board. It's really important for these teams to make big decisions, arguably before the World Cup if they can. So, even like managerial decisions. So, teams like Palace need to be making a decision on the manager before the World Cup, so they can get everything in place. And that's actually where Bournemouth, I think, have done a pretty good job in terms of getting their new manager in for next season. They know who it is. As soon as the season finishes, he'll be in there and he can get to work. And it's where United, whatever they do, they just need to make a decision with Carrick or whoever the new manager would be. Is what they don't want is the sort of thing that's happened in recent times where they umming and ahhing, are we going to keep him or not? And then next thing you know is you're 2 months into the summer almost. So I think they need to be decisive, and Real Madrid need to be decisive in terms of that managerial job.
Yeah. Here's a question for you for thought, not to answer today, but maybe next week or something like that. Is your player, right, and you're going to a club like Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Real Madrid, or any top club, or any club really, and there's going to be a managerial change, or there already is one available, or it looking likely there's going to be one. Are you actually going to ask modern day players, going to ask now who the manager or the head coach is going to be, or are you signing for the football club? Like, say for example, this is Liverpool, just thinking out loud that Slot goes, which I still think he is going to go. If you're an Adam Wharton, for example, and you come in and you're saying, okay, who's been the manager? Are you thinking, yeah, I want to play under Slot, or if Slot's going to be in charge, I don't want to play under him, or you actually want to play for Liverpool Football Club?
I
Are
think you
you
still
too
want.
worried as a player?
I think you'd be foolish not to want to know what the plans are in terms of the manager, given how
Yeah,
different the systems some of them play are. You, obviously the club would be foolish to bring in a player who doesn't suit a certain system. Like you wouldn't bring in a wing back if you play a back, flat back four type of thing. But
yeah.
I think you want to know who the manager's going to be. I think, um, and if nothing else, if you're a Liverpool or someone like that, if you want to be making that, you want to know what you're doing with the manager. They need to know now exactly what they're going to be doing with regard to Slot. Hughes and Co should know
I
for
think
that
they
last
do.
day
I'm just,
either Slot goes or Slot stays, and they should already have lined up. Like 4 or 5 transfers or whatever they want to do, potential transfers. And it's not always as easy as that. It's easier at the big clubs, by the way, because you want a player they're likely to sign for you. You're not a bit like Isak, which if you want a player, they'll normally sign for you. So if
yeah, I
if
think
Liverpool want Wharton, they'll sign Wharton if they can agree the money sort of thing. So they should have all these sort of players lined up, and they should know it should all be ready to go.
they do, 100% they do. It was an interesting point of thought. That the players are signing for the club, they're not signing for the managers per se, because the club is always bigger than any player or any manager or any employee anyway. So, club will always be there in 100 years, and obviously, people won't be there in 100 years. But yeah, it's just an interesting thought. If you're going to Real Madrid or a big club, are you worried about who the manager is going to be, kind of thing?
So do have championship playoffs this weekend. We have Hull, Millwall, Middlesbrough, Southampton. Hull, Millwall's tonight. Middlesbrough, Southampton's tomorrow lunchtime. Um, it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure it's going to be great for the Premier League if either Hull or Millwall in the Premier League next year.
No, and a colleague of mine was talking about his Millwall fan. Obviously, they kind of bottled it against Leicester. They didn't bottle it, but if they'd won that game against Leicester, they'd have gone automatically. He was saying they're a counter-attacking side, Millwall, and Hull are very similar as well. So it'll be a tight one in those two-legged games. But you'd fancy probably Southampton, the form side, aren't they? And probably the better side out of the four. So yeah. But yeah, if Hull or Millwall came up, crumbs almighty, you'd be looking at 10 points.
Oh, possibly not even.
It'd be a week, wouldn't it? You'd have Coventry, Ipswich, and say one of those two. Crumbs, yeah.
So we obviously have some Scottish football this weekend. Just a small game going on this weekend, James.
Yeah, so there's only 2 games left in Scotland, and the big one is the Old Firm Derby on Sunday at 12 o'clock. I'm surprised it's 12 o'clock. It's probably a bit too late for them. Should be almost be about a 10 o'clock start, but 12 o'clock at Celtic Park is Celtic versus Rangers. Rangers are probably out of the league. This league, Celtic will need to win. Bearing in mind that Hearts play on Saturday afternoon, I believe, against. That's not the right. Yeah, Hearts are away. Sorry, Saturday evening they're away at Motherwell, which is a tough game for them. Hearts, but they also had that massive comeback win against Rangers on Monday afternoon. So yeah, it's all building up to the last game of the season, I believe, which is going to be Hearts versus Celtic a week on Saturday or Sunday. I don't know when it exactly is, but there's 2 games left in the Scottish Premiership. And it's looking like a 2-horse race between Hearts, who are 6-10 favourites essentially against Celtic.
Premier League this weekend, so I think we'll know after this weekend exactly what's happening with that title race. I think that obviously the game of the weekend is West Ham Arsenal, has impact at both ends of the table. With Arsenal having Burnley and Crystal Palace after this game, this feels like the last opportunity really for Arsenal to drop points. I think this is actually going to be a slightly trickier game than people realise. West Ham obviously got pumped by Brentford on paper. I thought they played okay. That first half, they played really well, actually, and they created chances. I don't think this is going to be the easy game that some people think. Obviously, Arsenal are going to come into it very full of confidence, but I do wonder about energy levels sometimes. When you have those big Champions League nights, or the same will apply for like Villa against Burnley on Sunday. It's not that easy to just get yourself back up for another massive game. It helps when you're going for the title, obviously, but these guys can only go to the well as such so many times. And I think it's inevitable you see a little bit of a drop off from Arsenal relative to, say, the energy and intensity of an Atletico Madrid. It's where you actually need to use your squad.
Yeah, emotionally to get up for that game. But as you said, they're going for the title, and they know deep down, as you said, that Burnley are on the beach and garbage, and Palace won't play anyone because they're resting up for the conference final. I mean, it's the last chance saloon really for West Ham, I think. I mean, Tottenham have got Leeds at home on Monday night as well. West Ham need to get something out of that game looking at their fixtures. They go away to Newcastle as the week after as well. They kind of, that last weekend, I know they played all right against Brentford, as you mentioned. Like, they hit the post 3 times and fine margins kind of thing. And Mavropanos was offside by a shoulder blade kind of thing. If that goes to 1-1, they're playing all right. And they do have goals. They can trouble Arsenal. Will Wilson play up against Gabriel and Saliba? Probably not. I don't know. But they've got goals. Like Somerville will give Ben White some trouble on the left-hand side kind of thing. And Jared Bowen can always give Calafiore or Hincapié. I just worry defensively, and I don't rate the West Ham goalkeeper, Hermansen, at all. And set pieces, we've seen it a couple of years running where Arsenal just absolutely dominate. Go to London Stadium. Didn't they win 6-1 or 5-1 a couple of years ago and scored about 3 or 4 from set pieces kind of thing?
So that would be the obvious, avenue for Arsenal to have a lot of success here would be set pieces. West Ham have been worst in the league defending set pieces all year. What I would say is the signing of Disasi in January has helped a little bit in terms of solidifying them defensively at set pieces, but they're still not good.
Him and Mavropanos are decent, kind of thing. I just that result last week for West Ham and Tottenham winning as well is just changed the mindset. I know the price has changed completely, but the mindset must be now like we need to get something out. It is a London derby. I just think Arsenal on a roll kind of thing. They played well against Fulham, didn't they? For 55, 60 minutes when they shut up short lane kind of thing. But yeah,
it feels like
happen.
it
First
feels
goal
like,
game. We
right,
talk
so
about it all the time, but yeah. If
first
West
goal,
Ham can score a goal and get the crowd on side, but if you go 1-0 down to this Arsenal side, they tend not to lose. Or they don't, well, they would probably draw kind of thing. I mean, you don't know Arsenal give a player sent off or anything like that, but yeah, it's
one thing
tough.
I was going to say is that first goal is big because West Ham, when chasing games, have been poor this year. Their record, in the game state is negative, has been poor. They've been poor at chasing games. So it's almost more important for them to score that first goal than it is for Arsenal. If West Ham score the first goal, Arsenal can still come back and win. But if Arsenal score that first goal, it's going to be really, really tough for West Ham to get back into it. But I think what you're in a situation now is you need a unexpected result to happen in West Ham's favour. So whether it be a West Ham winning at Newcastle, West Ham beating Arsenal, Tottenham losing to Leeds would be big. If West Ham could say get a draw or something like that, it needs something just to shift the balance back towards West Ham. But it doesn't feel all that likely at the moment. Tottenham have obviously got Leeds at home on, what was it, Monday night? I mean, they were going into that in a very different place to where they were last time they were at home for that Brighton game. Back-to-back away wins. I mean, Leeds don't really have that much to play for either. Tottenham are picking up some nice fixtures in that respect towards the end of the season.
Yeah, Leeds have had the week off though, haven't they, as well? So you don't know what the Leeds have been up to. I have no idea. Whether they've been given 3 or 4 days off training, I'm not sure. Leeds are still decent. They've still got something to play, a bit of pride and thing, but it's not like they're not jeopardy of going down kind of thing. Leeds will give them problems. Calvert-Lewin and co will give them problems, the centre-backs. I don't care who you are. So, and they are playing well. Ah, we'll know because of the game, the West Ham Arsenal game. Tottenham have a massive advantage of knowing almost what to do over 24 hours after the game. Uh, It's a, I mean, yeah, it's the way it's always going to be. But I'm a big bugger over mine. I still think games should be played at the same time at the stage of the season. But there you go.
Liverpool, Chelsea, James, feeling confident of another Arne Slot masterclass at home.
2 rubbish teams, really, aren't they? 2 badly coached rubbish teams. I
I
don't know what the
Go on.
injury situation is with Liverpool. I don't know what the injury situation with Alisson is. He didn't train on Wednesday. Liverpool obviously had another 2 days off. This is Arne Slot's. Have 2 days off. Yeah. Have another 2 days off, lads. It's okay. Don't worry about it. We don't need to work on systems or formations. I need to go back to Holland to go on whatever I do in Holland. He's a joke of a manager, that fella. Absolute job's way too big for him. It just winds me up how constantly excuse after excuse after excuse with that lad. So I don't know about Alisson. Woodman then goal again. Isak, is he going to be fit? Probably not. So I do worry where the goals come from. I don't think Salah's going to be fit either. So I do where Liverpool goals come from. Because Liverpool didn't create a chance against Man United. Let's be honest, brutally honest. They got given 2 goals against Man United and didn't create anything else at all. So don't know where the Liverpool goals coming from in that side. And Chelsea, I mean, what Chelsea? I mean, they were talking yesterday. McFarlane did his press conference yesterday. He was talking that Reece James is going to be back and Levi Colwill. Levi Colwill's an interesting one because obviously he's coming back from an ACL, but you don't come back and top of your game in ACL when he came on at half time against Forest, didn't he? He's an Reece James, he'll probably start ahead of Gusto. I don't know, he's too badly coached side. Liverpool just need to win, don't care really how, and confirm their top 5 spot in the Premier League. It's not a game I'll be watching. Just one thing on Liverpool before I forget. FSG have gone back on their ticket prices increases the last 24 hours. So they've increased it by 3% for next season, but then they've put it on hold for the season and the season after. So they've listened to the fans again, FSG.
Colwill is interesting as much as it's big for Chelsea to get him back this year, like this part of the season. Not for this season, but what it means is he should be able to not necessarily hit next season running, but he's going to have a proper preseason and it'll give him a chance to be a bit nearer returning properly as for the start of next season. Because if he hadn't returned to training until after preseason started, you could have almost written off the whole of next season for him. So at least he gives himself a chance of coming back this year. I think one thing I would say with Chelsea, I was thinking about that Nottingham Forest game from Monday, and I do feel a little bit sorry for the manager, and only in as much as everything that could have gone wrong for Chelsea did. And I tend to look at these things probably slightly differently to some people. Yes, obviously everyone will question their attitude and desire and everything, but You concede after 2 minutes to Awoni's good finish, first chance of the game. Obviously, they give away the stupid penalty from the pool, like lazy defending. Can't really blame the manager for that per se. You're 2-0 down, chasing the game. You hit the post. You miss a penalty. You have a goal disallowed. You having players get injured and things like that. Yeah, obviously, it's against a much changed Forest team. They didn't play that badly. They created bits and pieces. Obviously, you have a goal disallowed, which would have got it back to 2-1 for offside. Forest go up the other end and have a similarly close decision go in their favour. 3-0 at that point. Obviously, Pedro scored the overhead kick late on. But I don't think Chelsea were necessarily quite as bad as it's probably being made out. I think it's very easy to have these sort of narratives. Just because you see a scoreline and see, oh, Chelsea lose 3-1 at home to a much changed Forest team. Whilst not good, I don't think it was necessarily quite as bad as being made out.
Yeah, and just one last point of the game. Caicedo and Lavia up against Gravenberch and McAllister, if you want to play them midfield, will just absolutely dominate. I know Lavia's been injured for 2 years, but he is a very good footballer. And Caicedo, when he wants to be, is one of the top 3 or 4 midfielders in the Premier League kind of thing. So that is a big concern for Liverpool, how soft and the attitude and the laziness of Gravenberch and McAllister. Well, McAllister can't run and Gravenberch is just not a very good footballer and has been garbage for the last 8 to 12 months. So that is one big concern, that Lavia and Caicedo can dominate that middle of that park and then control the game for Liverpool's perspective. But yeah, I wouldn't be piling to Liverpool per se at 10 to 11, thank you very much.
I think Man City Brentford's interesting. I'm intrigued to see how Man City sort of respond to the ridiculousness of that Everton game. They were in complete control in that game and blew it, basically. I'm not going to say they bottled it. That's probably slightly harsh. But they completely fell apart. And, obviously they've got to be beating Brentford just in hope that Arsenal, drops some points against West Ham. They're obviously playing the day before, so they do have a chance actually to get a bit closer to the Arsenal team. Anything but a City win, and obviously the title's Arsenal's. So that in itself means there is some pressure.
I think Brentford will give them some trouble. Brentford have played well they played well at Man United. I'm not saying that's a barometer because I think United are garbage, but they played well, didn't take their chances. Thiago missed 2 or 3 great chances at Old Trafford. They're scoring goals. I know we talked about the West Ham game kind of thing. Still won 3-0 kind of thing anyway. They play some nice, intricate football, which might help Man City in terms of they'll want to come and play football under Keith Andrews. They won't just sit back in and just go, right, break us down and make it hard for Man City to break them down. So I think it'll be quite an open game. But Brentford can definitely cause City some problems.
I think you'll see them sit in, honestly.
You reckon?
I think you'll see them sit in and then try and rely on the pace of Ouattara and Sade out wide. Because we know you can get at that City. You know you can get that City back four. Yeah, I think they'll. You can't really go toe to toe with City. I mean, they'll just tear you apart. I do think they'll sit in a little bit and try and use the pace in wide areas.
It actually be a half decent game to watch. Actually, be 5:30 Saturday night here in the UK. Yeah,
I mean, there are a few games which really mean nothing. So you got Brighton, Wolves. Obviously important for Brighton to win in terms of that 6th place, but you got to be beating Wolves at home. Sunderland, Man United, who cares? Crystal Palace, Everton, who cares? One interesting one is Forest, Newcastle. I mean, Forest still need maybe another point, or maybe another 3 points, depending on what happens in terms of getting a result. It's going to be very difficult for Forest to lift themselves, I think, after what happened last night. They played a lot of football recently. They do have injuries. We talk about emotionally how difficult it is to get yourself back up for these games. And I tend to think Newcastle at times are more suited to playing away from home as well, in terms of trying to use the pace of Gordon or others like Alanga or like that up front, hit you on the break. So I think Forest could struggle a little bit in that game, although Newcastle aren't great.
yeah. You'll be able to see in the first 10, 15 minutes of that Forest what they're like physically as well. if they're actually, they're pressing high or whatever, because, as you say, there's not long recovery time as well. I know they didn't have any travel, obviously, back from Villa yesterday, kind of thing. So they're back home in their own beds, kind of thing, probably by midnight, 1 o'clock. But as you say, trying to get back up for it, they need Gibbs White back in that side.
He
They've
won't. He won't be playing on. He won't be playing in that game.
I doubt he'll play on Sunday, kind of thing. And they'll probably, I mean, yeah, is Sangare fit, kind of thing? You just don't know, do you? So it's yeah, that'll be a tough game. Newcastle probably delighted. The best time to play for us away is probably on
So
Sunday.
Murillo. Here's an interesting one for you.
Murillo
Murillo's
came
had.
on last night.
I
Yeah.
know, with like 10 minutes to go, whatever. It just seems such a bizarre substitution. By the way, he is an enormous unit.
Yes. He's a little bit too small to be a top class centre back, I think, for a big club.
But
But he's very useful as a left sided
um,
centre back and a 3, probably.
and then the only other game is Burnley Villa. Burnley obviously relegated. Villa need to win that game for top 5 Champions League spots. So I think you actually see Villa will be very they're quite happy to tank the Tottenham game. Villa will be very motivated to get those 3 points away at Burnley. They have to, and if they do that, then that's almost a Champions League guaranteed. In fact, they could secure Champions League football if Bournemouth don't beat Fulham. So that's the only other game was Fulham versus Bournemouth. I actually quite fancy Bournemouth in that game. I think the way Fulham play, I think will actually suit Bournemouth. Bournemouth look better, I think, being able to hit teams on the break a bit more. I think that could suit Bournemouth that game, but we shall see.
I've actually got tickets to the Fulham Bournemouth game. I'm not far from Craven Cottage. I'm really interested if Alex Scott plays. Really interested to watch him play. I do really rate him. Good footballer, very good footballer.
But right, James, anything else from the week of football?
Not a week of football. Just a couple of things. There is a great other sport. There is a great boxing match here in the UK tomorrow night in Manchester. Fabio Wardley fights Daniel Dubois in a January 50-50 fight Saturday night live on DAZN. I think it's pay-per-view DAZN here in the UK. Saturday night, probably about 10 o'clock is ring walks. It's Wardley coming out from white knuckle quadder fighting kind of thing from nowhere kind of thing. Big knockout punch, both of them. So yeah, obviously Dubois lost last time out. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch that on Saturday night. That'll be a good fight. And obviously, looking ahead, there's a bit of IPL and there's a bit of other things going on, a bit of rugby union, a bit of golf. But next week, obviously, you've got some PGA golf that we might do a podcast. You and John might do a podcast on the PGA golf. We've got other couple of things lined up. Just one thing on cricket, I did see that England are likely to appoint Marcus North as their new chief national selector. I mean, I don't mind it in per se. I don't care what nationality he is, kind of thing. And he has got a history of he's a Durham County Cricket Director of Cricket. He's been over here for 8 years. And he's played a lot of county cricket. But the first test match is on June the 4th. The last test match finished in Sydney in the first week in January. Why are we taking 4 months to appoint a national selector? And there's been, 4 or 5 rounds of championship cricket going on? And you're only disappointing him now, so he's missed out on this round as well. So I think you got one more round of championship cricket before the first test match. I mean, absolute nonsense. And talking of nonsense as well, they backed Steve Borthwick in the rugby union as well, England. It's just like, how can you have organisations that are so inept at the top level? It winds me up. It really does. Anyway,
I hadn't
rant
noticed,
over.
James.
What was that, sorry?
I hadn't noticed it winds you up.
But, I mean, please explain to me how it's taken 4 months to employ a national selector and you've missed the first 6 weeks of county cricket when the test match starts in less than 4 weeks' time.
James, you're giving the impression that they care less about what the players are doing in the county championship.
Rob Key's probably still playing golf down at Princesses or St George's somewhere along the line.
Words
Was
are
that
hollow.
Cordy's dad?
All right, let's wrap it up there, and we will catch up with everyone on Monday. So we should have a better idea about title, relegation. But in the meantime, James, Super John McGinn. Anyway, thank you all.
There'll be no more singing on this podcast, Luke, even if you do win the final in Istanbul on the 20th of May. Thank you very much. Yeah, enjoy all. Have a good weekend.